Hi, I'm going to go over performing a bump test in a multi-ray gas monitor. So a bump test is a periodic test that ensures everything in the monitor is working as intended. So we're making sure that the gas is getting into the sensors unobstructed, that the sensors are reacting to that gas, that reaction triggers an alarm, and that all of the alarms on the unit are operating as intended. So a bump test performed will tell you that everything on the monitor is working and it's safe to be used. So to perform a bump test, we need a cylinder of bump gas, which we have here. It's a mix of the gases that we use for calibration, but at higher concentrations to ensure that we are setting off the low alarm levels. There's a constant flow regulator with a valve, short length of tubing, and this cap that goes on the monitor. So to start the bump test, we're going to turn the monitor on and make sure it's warmed up. This would be a normal screen that we would see during any time the monitor is operating in a clean air environment, 20.9% oxygen and 0 or close to 0 on everything else. So we put the cap on, and I'll try to bring this in here so that you can see the reaction. All we need to do is open this valve on the regulator for about 3 to 5 seconds. So I'm going to crack that open there, 2, 3, 4, 5, and shut it off. So I'm going to go over the alarms that we're seeing here. We've got our low oxygen alarm, we've got an LEL alarm, a carbon monoxide alarm, hydrogen sulfide alarm. It just dropped below the alarm threshold. And then you'll notice we actually had it was an over range alarm, and now it's a high alarm for the hydrogen cyanide. So we didn't actually give it any hydrogen cyanide. There's none in this cylinder, but we know that the hydrogen cyanide sensor is very cross-sensitive to hydrogen sulfide. So when we gave some hydrogen sulfide to trigger the H2S sensor, it also caused a very high reaction in the hydrogen cyanide sensor. This is normal. This is a known cross-sensitivity, and I think it's a really good learning point that just because we're getting a reading on these sensors, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is that specific target gas. There are many different gases that can cause cross-sensitivity on several of these sensors, and that's a really good indicator. But in this case, we've actually done a bump test on that sensor without giving it any hydrogen cyanide gas by using the cross-sensitivity that we know is there with the hydrogen sulfide. So you may have noticed that there wasn't a reaction on the PID. So that's the photoionization detector reads volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. So you'll see that that's this spot here on the monitor. So none of the gases in our bump test cylinder are gases that can be picked up by the PID. We can either do this with a separate cylinder of isobutylene, or a much easier way of doing that is to simply use this standard Sharpie marker. We just pop the cap off and we hold the Sharpie right next to the air intake for a couple seconds. You can see the readings start to go up there, and we've now triggered an alarm. So that is a successful bump test for the PID. Put the cap back on the Sharpie there, and then we'll let this just kind of come back down to 0, and we have now completed a bump test on all 6 installed sensors on this multi-ray, and it is ready to go.